Hello NBA fans and welcome back to another episode of the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly series here on the NBA the week that was. Today I'll be analyzing the Minnesota Timberwolves and what went well for them this year and what could be worked on moving forward. I hope you're enjoying this series and we're almost done with it, and just before the July 30th resumption of the NBA, I'll be releasing my predictions for the resumption of this season. So without further ado, let's get right into the next episode of the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly series here on the NBA the week that was. Coming into the season, the Timberwolves really didn't have high expectations for them. Despite the fact that they had two number one overall picks on their roster in Karl-Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins, only Cat had somewhat lived up to the hype that he had from college. He's actually a really good center in this league, arguably a top 5 center, but Wiggins was famed to be that next Jordan Kobe player, but has only lived up to being around an 18-19 point scorer and being very inefficient. However, at the start of the season, things went really well for Minnesota. They started off really well and looked like a playoff team. Wiggins had a really good start, averaging around 25 points and just looking like that number one overall pick that everyone saw coming out of that 2014 draft. However, after some injuries and just overall, that hot streak just went away and the Timberwolves really started to lose games, which led to the complete roster overhaul that happened during the trade deadline. By the end of the trade deadline and when all of the free agent signings had been completed for the Timberwolves were only left with two players from last season, Karl-Anthony Towns and the sophomore shooting guard Josh Okogie, who is a great 3-and-D wing who I'll go into later. Some key standouts for the Timberwolves this year came after the trade deadline. Before the trade deadline, there were players that really didn't stand out, who I'll go into afterwards. But after the trade deadline, I feel that the Timberwolves really, are starting to form their new identity. Players such as Malik Beasley, who they acquired from Denver, same as Juancho Hernangomez. Both of these players are great 3-point shooters and were great role players for the Nuggets, but given the plethora of talent that the Nuggets had, the Timberwolves gave them more of an opportunity to blossom, which ended up happening. Malik Beasley and Juancho Hernangomez really gave hope to the Timberwolves fans going into the suspension of the season. They also acquired Amari Spellman and Jacob Evans, Jake Layman, just other role players who are young, but that can be blossomed into becoming something better. However, the key acquisition of this trade deadline was D'Angelo Russell. They moved on from that massive contract of Andrew Wiggins, gave up on the Andrew Wiggins era in Minnesota, and went with D'Angelo Russell, one of Karl-Anthony Towns' best friend. As we've known, Russell is a great point guard. He's a great scorer, has above average playmaking, and is overall a top 10 point guard in this league. However, he really fit in well in Minnesota. Given the offensive ceiling that increased due to Russell's arrival, his partnership with Cat worked out really well. They were given the freedom to run the offense, and their pick and pop and pick and roll worked to perfection in Ryan Saunders' system. So overall, D'Angelo Russell was a great trade deadline acquisition. Even though they went away from Andrew Wiggins, I feel honestly, they got the better of that deal, getting D'Angelo Russell, and they also got the better of that 4-team deal, which got them Malik Beasley and Juancho Hernangomez. Even though letting go of Robert Covington hurts them because Robert Covington is a premier 3-and-D wing. Getting Malik Beasley and Juancho Hernangomez gives them more age and just more potential to work with rather than Covington. I felt Covington has reached his ceiling, but Beasley and Hernangomez, especially Beasley, have way more potential, can eventually be developed into key players for a contending team. So overall, after the trade deadline, the only consistent player I feel on the team this year was obviously Karl-Anthony Towns. He's just an offensive enigma. That guy can shoot the ball. He's an insane rebounder. He has an insane post game. He's overall an offensive talent. He's average at defense, but I feel that he was so overworked on offense, he didn't really have the time to try on defense. So still, this is something I'll go into later, but overall, Karl-Anthony Towns was consistent. But after the trade deadline, after the trades and acquiring all those players, the Timberwolves really found a group of players that they can move forward with. Their former core wasn't worth moving forward, paying all those guys those money. They went with the young players, and I feel that unfortunately the suspension hurts them, because even though they weren't going to make the playoffs, they still could have gotten time to develop their new players. However, this suspension obviously hampered the ability to develop their players. But overall, I feel that Minnesota has some good prospects moving forward. However, their place as the 14th seed in the Western Conference and their 19-win record this year proves that the Timberwolves really were a bad team and just deserve to be a lottery team. a lot of things didn't work well for them. I'm going to start talking about Jarrett Culver. And they drafted him. Coming into the draft, I felt that Culver was a great prospect. He played really well in the March Madness tournament for the Texas Tech, and he was just a great scoring wing, but also oozed with defensive potential. As a Hawks fan, I thought he would be a great fit. However, I'm happy that the Hawks saw the mistakes that he's making in the NBA. In the NBA, he's been very underconfident, isn't able to get to the rim that he was in college. His three-point shot has been very underwhelming. That was a strength of him in college, but it just isn't working out in the NBA, and he isn't able to keep up at the defensive levels as he did in college. So overall, Culver hasn't been a great pick for the Timberwolves. Hopefully, he's also on the older side. Hopefully that the Timberwolves can, capitalize on the potential he showed in college and, make him into a serviceable shooting guard. But I really don't see too much of a great future for Jarrett Culver in Minnesota. However, another issue with the Timberwolves was their defense. Both their two main stars, D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns, and when they had Wiggins were all underwhelming defenders. Their primary strengths are offense, and overall the Timberwolves would always crumble on defense, which led to a lot of late game losses in games that they could have won because of their offense if they had mediocre defense. But they were one of the worst defenses in the league, and that definitely needs to improve moving forward. And it'll honestly be tough. Juancho Hernan-Gomez isn't known for his defense. Malik Beasley has the athleticism to be a good defender, but hasn't really showcased that on the main level in the NBA. Karl Anthony Towns, again, has the tools to be a good defender, but needs to capitalize on the potential. And D'Angelo Russell just needs to push himself to do better on defense. So overall, defense is a thing that Coach Ryan Saunders and their general manager need to focus on in the offseason, and improving or drafting players that improve their defense, or just overall within their squad, getting players up to a certain defensive standard. So overall, the Timberwolves, even though they didn't have the greatest year, there are some glimmers of hope. As I said, the acquisitions during the trade deadline, and overall Karl Anthony Towns' continued development as a top 5 center in this league. So there are glimmers of hope for the Timberwolves, but they really need to make those count rather than letting them fizz out, and they need to make better decisions, which I feel that they're doing now. When they had Wiggins and stuff, made all those draft picks, those weren't the greatest draft picks, but now I think they should really focus in on just overall focusing on making better decisions and growing as a team with players such as Cat, D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, Juancho Hernan-Gomez, and Jordan McLaughlin is one player I want to actually mention. He was an undrafted rookie, but he ended up doing well as a point guard. He had some great games, and he's just a great serviceable point guard moving forward for the Timberwolves. So there are glimmers of hope here or there, but overall it wasn't a great season for the Timberwolves. So for Timberwolves fans, I know you guys are hoping for a better season next year. And with that, I would like to wrap up this episode of the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly series here on the NBA, the week that was. I hope you're enjoying this series, and just continue to support my channel by subscribing, liking all the videos, and just leaving any comments for me, whether it's good or bad. I love to hear what you guys are saying about my videos. So I'll catch you guys on the next episode of the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly series here on the NBA, the week that was. See ya.